35 Indians went to the Isle of Man 2018. Vishy Anand was the top seed for the Indian contingent. He was the 6th seed in the tournament and he played pretty well. He scored +3 and managed to score 6 out of 9 points without losing a single game. However, the Indian player who finished ahead of everyone else and was 8th in the tournament was not Anand but Adhiban. He's a grandmaster from Chennai. Of course, he doesn't need any introduction, plays amazing chess. But what was very surprising for me is that in the last round, when Adhiban was on 5.5 out of 8, he was facing a very solid opponent in the form of Michael Adams. Now Adhiban had the black pieces and one can always play very solidly and hope for to hold the position, but he went for the Sicilian. He went for the full-fledged fight against Adams, and at some point the position was even. I would like to take the position over here. Adhiban is black and you can see that he's trying to push in the position. He has this strong rook on b2 with the pawn advanced to a3. Knight is sitting very strong on c3. There is a pawn on d4. But what white has is these very nice pawns. Pawn structure is very solid, and right now he's covering up all his weaknesses. So in this position it was white to play. It was Adams' move, and I was thinking that Adams would play king d3 here, and then the game could go something like knight to d5, rook c8, king f7, and then you try to take the a3 pawn, so rook into h2, rook a3. And yeah, there are some tricks like knight takes f4 here, because if you recapture you lose the rook. But I guess you can just take on d4, and the position is around even. I think the game would have ended in a draw. But what Adams did here was he played the move knight to b3. Now I would like you to pause the video and try to think, what should black do here? Okay, if you came up with the move rook into b3, that's excellent. But if you thought that it was winning for black, I don't think that's great, because Adams also saw this for sure. Rook into b3. He's not a player who would miss such a move. And after ab3, a2, of course you cannot go rook c1, because here knight b1 check simply allows black to make a queen. So he took the pawn on a2 and knight a2, and what Adams assessed, the way he assessed this position was that it's equal, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with his evaluation. I think it was a very good idea to go into this position, because now white's moves are pretty easy. King d3, knight c1. Of course you don't want to lose the b3 pawn. For example, this position would be much difficult to hold and I think it's completely lost, because now the battlefield is just in one zone. When it's just in this zone, then the knight becomes much stronger. However, if you keep the b3 pawn in the position, then the zone is much wider. It's like the zone would be something like this, and then the knight cannot jump as fast as it would like. So king c2, knight a2, king d3, knight b4, and Adams took the pawn. This is what Adhiban had to give up in order to play for a win, and now he activated the king. So the position is somewhere around equal right now, but it's of course very complicated. For example, white could go king c5, which he did in the game, knight d3, he came back, and now Adhiban was able to put his knight to b2. Michael thought that the knight is sidelined now, so let me start improving the position. So he first played h3, g6, g4, and h4. Very important to keep some material on the board. So now the h4 pawn will prove to be a strength at some point. b4, king e7, b5, and now it's time to stop the pawn, so knight a4. Here Adams played king c4, king d7, and he came back king d4, which is completely fine. Black went knight to b6, and this is where the critical mistake in the game occurred. So I would like you to take some time here, try to find white's best move, and also find out what Adams did wrong. Sometimes it's interesting to see how a GM who's 2700 plus, who is extremely strong, very good endgame player, makes errors in such endgame. Okay, I hope you had a good think and that you found the move king c5 to be the correct move, because now you are attacking the knight, and after it's defended you just come back. So when white starts to if black waits, you come back and you keep juggling between these two squares and it's a draw. But if white tries to do something like knight a4 and black tries to do something with knight a4, bring his king to b6, then you have the nice move f5. And this works pretty well because after ef, gf, e6, now we want to push the pawn, so king comes up, e7, and king e5. You're going to win the f5 pawn and also the h4 pawn, and this will end in a draw. So king c5 was definitely the correct move, and I was very surprised to see that Adams played the move king to e4. And now once again the ball is in your court. What are you going to do here with black? So pause the video and try to think. This is important because it's the last round. There's a lot of prize money at stake. There's a lot of rating at stake. Also good finish. So what did Adhiban play here? Right, so the most important thing here is to now tie up this king to the defense of the f4 pawn, and that's the reason why the correct move was knight to d5. Excellent move. Congratulations if you found it. But more importantly, what is to be seen is that this knight on its own can control this entire structure here. So for example, what we are looking at right now, this structure, the knight can control it. What do I mean by that? For example, whenever white goes f5, this happened in the game, and even if the king is not on d7, black can just play g5. So if you take f into e6, you can just put your knight back to e7 and then everything is guarded. Or if you play f6, then knight goes from f4 to g6, stopping everything. So that's how the knight is working perfectly in this position and is not letting white do anything. So instead of f5, which was played in the game, we'll come to it in much more depth. The king f3, if it was played, black is just going to do and pick up the pawn there. As I said, you don't need the black king. The knight and the pawns, they themselves are capable. So f5, g5, f6, and yeah, as I said, f into e6, you go knight e7, the knight controls the crucial f5 square, and these two pawns are completely safe. So if you go f6, then knight to f4, f7, knight g6, and that's game over. This doesn't work. So in the game, instead of wasting time with king f3, white said, let me go for it. Adams played f5, but Adhiban had it all worked out. He played g5. I think Adams got really depressed in this position and he pushed his pawn to f6, and after knight c3 he just resigned the game. However, I feel that after g5, king d4 would have been much stronger, because now there are few threats. For example, my king cannot move because f into e6 is a threat. I'm threatening to penetrate with king c5. So for example, if you were to take e into f5 here, that would lose after king d5, f g4, king e4, gh3, king f3. You bring your king back, your king is going to stop these three pawns and your two pawns will win. Now, very easy way to know whether these two pawns will win the game is to just draw, let's say, a diagonal which is like a square. With the diagonal you can then draw a square, and if the two pawns form a square which reach to the end of the board, they are capable of defending each other. So if the king goes here, you can push this and the king cannot win either of the pawns. So e into f5 doesn't work, and so knight b6 is very important. And here after king e4 you face another problem, which is how are you going to win this position, because already the problem is that you don't have too many ways. White is always threatening f6 and maybe some point f into e6 when the king goes away. So what I tried to figure out, and this I did on my own, is that I need to get my knight to d7 when the king is on e4. So for example, if I play the move king e7 here, and you must go king e3 or king f3, because if you play king d4, I have this powerful strike, and now g4, and I'm able to get a passed pawn. So for example, after hg4, h3 is winning. And if you don't take it and you bring your king back, I have a protected passer, and this is just winning for black. So after king e7, white goes king e3, and here if you go knight d7, king e4, I don't see how you can improve, because I don't want to put my king on f7 and play king d4, because now if ef5, gf5, g4, you already have e6, and that's a pawn fork. So first I play king e8, I lose time, which is with king f7, king e3, king e7. It's some kind of a triangulation. And now when the king goes to e4, I play knight d7. So if king d4, then I have ef5, gf5, g4, which is winning. And if you don't play your king, your e5 pawn is hanging, and so you win the game. So this was a small trick by means of triangulation, like getting my king from f7, e8, e7. I managed to win, get him in a position which was not great for him. Now after king e7, he could go king f3, but now I have knight d5, which is a good move, because king e4 loses to knight c3 check. And if you are going to go further back, then that's already very bad for you. So this is how after the much stronger defense, which was king d4, black could have won. It's not so simple to figure this out. You need to work it out on your own. The computer engines might not be so useful at that point. But f6, knight c3, and this is how Adhiban won the game. He finished 8th, and he finished ahead of many strong players, including Karyakin and so many other top players. So congratulations to Adhiban for a fantastic show. He's on an ELO of 2668, and he gained 11 points. That takes him to 2679, moving towards 2700.